This is the Hagmann and Hagmann report for today. It's Wednesday, June 18th, 2014. This is a live broadcast. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me in studio is my co-host, my son, fellow investigator Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann report, and you're about to hear an incredible 3-hour program, folks. Thanks for tuning in to us, deliberately tuning in to us, for listening to us. You're listening to the only show where the news, information, assessment is presented to you in 3D. We look well beyond the headlines, the bylines, the fog of disinformation, misinformation, deliberate distraction to bring you the news behind the news. For new listeners, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us on the internet at HomelandSecurityUS.com. We're also simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune us in at the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.com. Spell out the word "and," 2 N's on Hagmann, and of course 1 G. That's Hagmann, the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.com. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks for your belief and your trust in us as we go through this information, as we walk through this virtual minefield together. I'll tell you, tonight is going to be a fantastic show. Before we get into that, I want to announce tomorrow night, it's going to be Steve Quayle and Pastor David Langford tomorrow night. Okay, both of them tomorrow night. We're talking about what's going on, the warring within the church without, the believers, non-believers, that type of thing. It's going to be a fantastic show. That's tomorrow night, Steve Quayle and Pastor David Langford. Tonight, of course, we have our very special guests, 2 insiders that know what's going on. It's V, the guerrilla economist, and W, our intelligence insider. Many of you have heard him before. Well, you've heard both of them before. Both we endorse. We know they're anonymous to most of you, if not all of you, we'll say. We know who they are. We stand behind them 100%. They're brothers in Christ in this fight, in this battle in which we are fighting. I'll tell you that. They're the real deal. We, as I said, we endorse them, both of them, 100%. Joe, welcome to the studio tonight.
Great to be here. Looking forward to W and V. W, the intelligence insider, V, the economic insider, the guerrilla economist, or as it's better known as. We're going to get a lot of information out there tonight. I do have an announcement to make, and I did not see this sooner, and I apologize to Paul McGuire for not seeing this sooner, but tomorrow, June 19th at 7 p.m., Paul McGuire is going to be holding a prayer and prophecy meeting at the Sportsman Lodge Studio on Coldwater and Ventura Boulevard in Studio City, California. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., Paul McGuire will be holding a prayer/prophecy meeting at the Sportsman Lodge Studio in Sportsman's Lodge in Studio City on Coldwater and Ventura Boulevard. And as I said, I apologize to Mr. McGuire for not getting back to him sooner. Go to paulmcguire.com or paulmcguire.org. He has information on his websites for the meeting tomorrow and a few YouTubes that he has put out as part of that. Perfect.
We will be in prayer for Mr. McGuire tomorrow night. That's great. Any of you close by, definitely stop. And if you're so inclined, send him an email. Send Paul an email of support. Just let him know you're thinking about him, praying for him. He's a great guy. So one of our dear friends, as a matter of fact, we'll be sending over. We're going to be populating the app with images. And when we were in Orlando, we spent a lot of time with Paul McGuire. Great man. And we've got some pictures of us with Paul. So those of you having the application, is it really an application or it's just an app? What is it? It doesn't matter.
It's an application or an app.
Okay. All right. I don't know the terminology of these things. But the fact of the matter is we'll be putting some photos up there and eventually on our website as well. Some good stuff. But with that, tonight, the guerrilla economist. Now, his website is roguemoney.net. That's roguemoney.net. That's V, the guerrilla economist. Truly an insider's insider. and W, of course, the intelligence insider. Talk about being right on the money with information. Both of these gentlemen are right on the money all the time with the information. Anytime they contact us or we're in contact with them, however we do it, it's always 100%. There's never any ambiguity with respect to what's going on. And, Joe, I don't know, buddy. I would, I want to check. All right. It's all right, folks. It's radio, right?
Yeah, I can, you just keep talking and give me 2 minutes and I'll find them all.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, we're waiting. Actually, our intelligence insider is going to be a few minutes late coming on tonight, but V should be right on, here up very shortly. Now, if the schedule goes as planned, next week we do have planned, hopefully Kevin Shipp, who wrote the book from the company Shadows, is going to be on with us next week. Former CIA agent, and that hopefully at some point next week we'll have him on, and a lot of other good guests lined up for you as well. Not confirmed yet, but a lot of good guests, a lot of informative guests, a lot of guests that we have not had before. So this should be a very exciting week coming up. Now, folks, with respect to tonight, I just want to say this. If you haven't gone to HomelandSecurityUS.com and read the summary of what I wrote earlier today, Intelligence and Financial Insiders tonight on the Hagmann and Hagmann report, okay, definitely read that. The reason I'm saying that is what you're going to hear tonight is a summary. I believe it will be mentioned, I hope it will be, somewhat redacted of, among other things too, of heavily coded information contained in certain publicized financial data that indicates there is insider communication taking place, which the best way to describe it would be communication among the global elite. All right? Communication between the global elite. This coding was spotted by our intelligence insider and run by our, of course, the guerrilla economist and others who know the lay of the land in that area. And our intelligence insider picked this up because of his experience with similar type of encryption given his previous experience. Well, that information is, and this was not just a single communication. This was a series of communications, and I really don't understand it myself in terms of how he was able to pick this up. It was explained to me a little bit. I wasn't given the entire key or the entire how it works, but I could say this. It would appear to me, from an investigative point of view, that there is, in fact, communications between certain powerful individuals that would indicate some sort of pre-planning or some sort of instructions being given to other members of the global financial community to do certain things that would include things such as dumping their paper positions on precious metals.
More importantly than that, it would be conspiring and doing things behind the public's back against their best interests for financial gain. And I didn't, as you said, I didn't understand the whole the code thing. I see issues with that. They could put out codes for, in my opinion, they could put out codes just to throw people off who might have been in the know, who might be in the know. But when thinking about it, it seems that instead of doing that, the codes would be I guess not even understanding them fully, but it would be a way to communicate with very little chance of being intercepted or caught by anybody.
Right. You're actually talking about maybe a dozen people on the globe that would actually know what this entails, and that's why it's kind of almost foolproof. During times, if you go back during the collapse of the Soviet Union, this happened. There were certain messages sent, communications done. So you've got to know what to look for, where to look for it. It doesn't happen all of the time. It's spotty, it's erratic, but based on, and you know, one thing, you weren't there when we were talking in person, when this was explained, when the other half was explained to me, or the more detailed portion was explained to me. I was able to see it, but did you ever see something or have something explained to you and you understand it, but you're unable to articulate it to someone else? You know,
All the time.
Man, I'll tell you, just all I can say is it would appear to me that we're looking toward, and in fact, I know Steve Quayle is familiar with what I'm talking about with respect to this finding. So if this is accurate, which I believe it to be, you will probably see some changes beginning in, I don't know, mid-July, maybe. And we're gonna let W and V address that when they come on. We are waiting for both of them to come on. We did know that our intelligence insider was going to be about 10 minutes late. We're still waiting on V, the guerrilla economist, to come on. But having said all of that, folks, things are going to be changing based on numerous conversations today. I mean, I think the both of us were on the telephone for hours upon hours upon hours. I will say this, that I do believe things will be changing very rapidly in the short term. We'll look toward, beginning perhaps mid-July, mid-next month, forward. Start thinking in that realm. Hold on just 1 second, guys.
All right, we have V.
There you go. Okay, and
W called. I think you called the wrong number.
No, that's just to let us know. That's the system of communication to let us know that. Okay. All right. You know what I'm talking about, right?
We do have with us the guerrilla economist, our financial insider, V. V, it's great to have you back on the Hagmann and Hagmann report. It's been a while. Hope everything's been well with you.
Joe, it's great to hear your voice. Doug, it's great to be back down in the center, the belly of the beast, the front lines, the tip of the spear. Gentlemen, let's get it on.
It's rock, man. Yeah, it's great. It's great to hear you. It's been a while. I know you've been tremendously busy, which is probably an understatement, but that's great. You've got a lot of information, it's my understanding, to disclose, to provide our listeners tonight, as well as W. But your website is roguemoney.net, folks. Bookmark that. That's roguemoney.net. Very important website. Now, of course, our intelligence insider W has got no website. So obviously, this is the case. But V, go ahead and start us out. Fire away. Where are we headed?
Sure. It's first of all, it's like I said, it's great to be back on. It's been a while. I mean, so many things have transpired. A lot of big events that we were talking about the last time we were on. I mean, the last time I was on with Steve, we talked about April being a major transitionary point. It was the buildup happening in May. I mean, my God. I mean, the amount of things that are occurring is just tremendous. Where we are today is pretty interesting. It was the whole story, and I'll give you a little bit of background on this before W comes on. About towards the middle of May, what occurred was I received information from the City of London that they're expecting a major event occurring within the middle of July. That event can be not only monetary and financial in nature, but also can be coalesced with a military action. when I pressed them to find out exactly what this military action was, and I said, hey, is this about Russia and Ukraine and them taking it? They said yes. And then I asked them, well, is this about Russia and Ukraine and them taking it? And then at the same time, will there be U.S. assets in the field that would be defeated to make the U.S. look incredibly bad? And the answer that was given was yes. So they said that this will occur. It will be a death blow to the dollar, and you can see a major turn occur away from the U.S., away from the dollar. And these are things, this movement away from the dollar has been happening at least acutely for the last 7 years or so. 6 years or so. So there's been a massive turn already. So this is starting to pick up pace. So the pace of this massive dollar deleveraging is occurring. So as I'm receiving this information and I'm listening to these guys and I'm talking to these guys back and forth, they're detailing out that, it's mid-July is going to be a point where the powers that be, those insiders, will be positioned to profit very greatly from this coming economic transition. And I found that to be very fascinating. And folks, if you don't know, the City of London is basically the powerhouse. It's the financial hub of the entire planet. It's not Wall Street. Wall Street plays second fiddle to the City of London. So when the City of London said, that these things are going to happen, this is what they're expecting, just as they, told me months ago that there's not going to be any kind of real sanctions against Russia, and that's exactly what happened because the City of London enjoys receiving a great amount of money from the Russians, and they enjoy putting Russian money as well as Chinese money into tax-free British tax havens, such as the Cayman Islands, Gibraltar, things of that sort. So now the City of London is going to position themselves in order to profit from this whole entire thing. They have people within Russia, within the Russian central bank, in the Chinese central bank. So while I'm getting all this information, folks, I get off the phone. That night at 3 o'clock in the morning, I get a text message from W saying, hey, I've received some line of code, which I haven't seen in X amount of years. It's been a very, very long time since I've received it. This is serious. This is a goal line code. It's insider baseball, as he liked to put it. It is a sign and a signal for certain individuals, certain parties to get ready for a coming transition timed for the middle of July. That will be the kickoff party for this whole entire thing. There's a correlation between this code and the silver market and the tie-ins to that. Now, I thought that was pretty damn amazing because here it is. I just got off the phone with the City of London that night. I get this text from W, and then the morning, a few hours into the morning, I wake up, they announce that the silver price fix is going to be closed as of August the 14th. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute, this is incredible. Get on the phone with Steve. Me and Steve, we bat up some ideas back and forth. Turns out he has a buddy of his who also cited a mid-July date. Now, the funny thing is all four of us came to the same conclusion. The mid-July date is July the 15th. So that code and everything that has to do with it and the actions that are stemming around, that are converging with the code, with everything seems to be converging for some sort of a mid-July event. Now, yesterday, or was the day before, I'm not exactly sure. I lose track of days. Someone forgive me because of the inordinate amount of hours that I'm awake throughout all the night. But I received news, and I believe it was Monday or Tuesday morning. I received news that the largest pipeline in Europe gets blown up. I break the news. It never makes it to the news wires. I was on the phone with Steve at probably like 7 o'clock in the morning his time, letting him know this. And he posted up on his site at 8:25 Mountain. But I received the word from around 9 o'clock in the morning when I was on the phone with the City of London again. And they said that it was U.S. assets, U.S. proxy assets, basically neo-Nazi right-wing groups in Ukraine that blew up that pipeline. Now, this pipeline, folks, I placed the alert on Steve's site as well as my site. This pipeline is the largest pipeline in Europe. It's been there since '68. Very robustly built, okay? Russians are known for building some pretty darn good pipes, very high strength. The pipe supplies natural gas to Italy, to France, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Czech Republic, and Switzerland. So we're talking about a major chunk of the European economy that is going to be affected by this pipeline explosion. And the finger point and the evidence for this whole entire thing is really starting to look like a false flag op. Because remember, to the buildup to this whole thing, what happened? The Russian says, the Ukraine says, we're not going to pay our gas bill. Russia cuts off gas supplies. Prior to this, we've seen the U.S., go to the EU and tell them, hey, listen, guys, we want you to go ahead and force the issue with the Russians, force Ukraine to confront the Russians. And the Europeans are like, well, if we do that, if the Russians cut off energy supplies, then we don't have any fuel for our economy. And the U.S. is like, well, basically, don't worry about that. We'll provide you natural gas, which is a bunch of nonsense, because of the simple fact that we are over 5 years away from having any sort of infrastructure to offer any cubic centimeter of gas. Okay. So then the IMF drafts papers to the Ukrainian government. The Ukrainian government and the country is very desperate for money. They need funds desperately. So the IMF documents, and you guys are going to love this one. The IMF documents for this loan, the stipulations of the loan is real simple. It says go to war with Russia or you get no money. So they have to go ahead, and the exact wording is you need to quell pro-Russian dissidents. So all this is happening right before this pipeline explosion. Now we can see, okay, that, and when I saw that occur, I said to myself, okay, this is the buildup, because this is now the justification. Now you're messing with the Russians' funds. This whole sanction nonsense they did, it didn't fly. It didn't fly at all. It had no effect. They hit Rosneft Bank. Rosneft Bank says, okay, you want to sanction us? You want to hold back some of the funds for our clients? Fine. All of our clients, you got to settle your accounts in rubles. Boom. So now the U.S. is like, okay, now we're going to hit the Russians where it hurts. They blew up a pipeline. Now you're directly messing with Russia's GDP and their economy. That is not good. Now, this is after their attempt to go ahead and try to freeze Vladimir Putin's $40 billion that he's got in the Swiss account. Folks, this is what we're talking about. There's all these things are converging. And that's what kind of brings us to this date. And I think tonight, Dumpy is going to go down his list and go through his sources, his information, what he's got to share. I'm going to give you my point of view, what I got to share from my sources. And you're going to see that there's a lot of similarities here. I mean, it's not 100% lined up, but then again, that's just the nature of intelligence. But when you see a lot of converging patterns here, it begins to start painting a very vivid picture. Hello?
Hi, folks. Doug Hagmann here. I'm just not sure if we have, if I'm on air. Okay, here we go. We are in the process. Okay, we're live. Thank you, Troy. And ladies and gentlemen, we apologize. Remember, the other day I was letting you know that our generator for the studio is being outfitted with a special box. Well, apparently we didn't do it quick enough, or we're not. It's not there. It'll be up. It'll be up by the end of the week. But anyway, that said, let's continue. VW, you folks there, we apologize.
Yeah, I'm here, Doug. I don't know where we left off. I mean, I kept going. So I don't know what's the last thing you guys heard.
Okay. Joe, hang on. Okay, thank you. Listen, you guys, because now we are funneled in through a different country, in different means. You keep talking, even though we would get cut off, you will still be live. So if we get cut off for some reason, okay, just take the show. All right. So,
well, that sounds like fun.
All right.
Well, let me just start this with this one thing. I've been praying that we had these deliverance services the other day, and I thought I needed to be praying for some of our brothers and folks that may be under some kind of demonic oppression or attack, and so I've been praying for V, fervently, because he needs to be delivered of GM products, and I just it starts with GM, and then you end up with GMO, and next thing you know, you're toast. I mean, you're fried. He's a Chevrolet Camaro guy, and as a Ford guy, all I can do is pray for him, bro.
He's just mad because I have more horsepower.
I got Shelby's, and he's got Camaros. So, anyway, but you're in my prayers. It's an East Coast, West Coast thing, I suppose. That's
what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And we got Quail, and Quail just likes horsepower, but what does Quail know? I mean, you got to be able to handle and all that. I mean, we can have a lot of fun and talk about this stuff, but at the end of the day, it is a serious moment. And the only thing I want to say for folks is that, and I've really been trying to hammer this with all the guys that I deal with. When we talk about these dire moments ahead and these dire things happening in the economy, we do have to temper this and try to make sure that people understand. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, but the end is not yet. That doesn't mean you don't try to get out of the way, and that doesn't mean that for some people they're right at the front almost instantaneously and don't realize it, and for them it is the end of the world. But we do have to try and have a bit of perspective in how we view these things. And we are on this world stage of events. And there's action on one part of the stage and then another part, and there's tit for tat and all sorts of things going on. And at any given moment, you could be right in the crossfire. And that's somewhat what we're talking about, that things are heating up. But you shouldn't lock up. You shouldn't become like a deer in the headlights. In a gunfight, the worst thing you can do, the worst place you can find yourself in, is pinned down and no way out, because then your time is numbered. You got you locked down, and it's just a matter how long you get till you're out of the bullet. Out of lead, you're dead. So this is about staying focused, keeping your eyes on the prize, understanding we're in this very dynamic, very active, moving moment, and you have to be light on your feet, lithe, able to move, able to maneuver. And if you have things in your life that are holding you down, that are weighing you down, that are tying you, chaining you to a place or a situation, that's probably by somebody else's design to make it hard for you to maneuver, move out of the way, get loose of them or their situation or their design before they can clip you, clean you out of whatever you got, etc. And so what you need to do is be understanding that what we're saying here in part is you need to consider your options and build in options that allow you to morph, move, change, adjust as this situation evolves. It is a moving target. We need to be moving targets. Does that make sense? Does that work for you, V?
That absolutely works for me. That's exactly what it is, folks. Since we're on scriptures, there's the famous scripture in the Gospels when Jesus was approaching Jerusalem, okay? And this is when he was riding on the donkey, and they were approaching there, and all of a sudden Jesus looked at the city and he said, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I've longed to hold you as a hen gathers her chicks under her arms, yet you would not come. Therefore your house is left unto you desolate until the day that you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." And he was prophesying the destruction of Jerusalem. You fast forward 70 years, and what happens? Well, you have the Roman general Titus, who is marching down on Jerusalem, And then you had a great number of Christians within the city. They remembered what the Lord said. So as soon as they received report, hey, there is a marching army of Romans approaching the city, what they did is they were ready. They didn't need to think about it. They didn't need to, what do I do now? Do I start the process? No. They were prepped and ready. In other words, they were mobile. Everything they had, they could fold it up, immediately store it away, put it on a donkey, and head to the hills. And that's exactly what happened. Not a single believer died that day in Jerusalem. Only those who stood behind the status quo Jews that were there, they were the only ones slaughtered. So when Titus surrounded Jerusalem and said, hey, you're not going to come out and fight, you could stay in there and starve, he laid siege to the city. And when they finally broke through, they saw that the streets were flowing with blood. Because the women and the men, they ran out of food. They began to cannibalize themselves. They began to cannibalize their own children. See, folks, this is what the Lord says. The wise man sees the danger, and he what? Gets out of the way. But the fool lacks discretion and goes right into his folly. So the things that we want to do, there's a lot of events. You know what? Some of these things are scary. Some of these things can overwhelm the average listener. But you have to take it with a grain of salt. And you have to understand that if you're prepared for these things, and you have time here, it's not the end. I was talking to W earlier in the day, and he said it best. It's like, you're falling off a cliff, and you're hitting many, many things on the way down. And I kind of like them. If anybody seen those Simpsons cartoons where Homer falls off the cliff and he's hitting a whole bunch of things, hitting a tree limb here, another cliff there, all the way down. And that's exactly what we are in this country, as a nation, as an economy, as a global superpower. So absolutely, I absolutely agree with his statement.
Well, let me just back up here now for a moment. Doug was trying to explain what it was that started this conversation in this current realm, and let me be very precise. This was not the date was May 2nd, and that was the date that I did the show that was a little different for some of the people listening to us. It was not maybe a show that most of the people who've heard me before on Doug and Joe's show would have expected, but that's the way it is. And so that evening, I had done something I do on a regular basis. As a lot of the people may remember, many, many, many years ago, was involved in the financial side of the takedown of the Russian economy in the late 80s. And in the course of that, we had done some very specific activities in financial markets in order to generate some of the financial resources that we needed to take this out. And so in the course of that, one of the things that occurred, we had done some trades, the short version, for those people that may want to understand a little more precisely and be able to validate or have some sense of comfort that I know what I'm talking about here. We had done some transactions that were piggybacked on other transactions, and we had the ability with computer software at the time, which was, rudimentary compared to today, within very specific banking programs that were not available to the public, communication lines, to anticipate fee transactions as they were occurring, and then decide to piggyback on those transactions and take part in them, and to maneuver in such a way that we could have excess cash after the fact to use for other purposes. Now, a lot of our activity, we weren't going to Congress and asking for permission or getting money. So we were making our own money on the side in these financial markets because we knew what was happening. We could slow down transactions a couple of minutes, get a transaction in place because we saw what two parties were doing, and they didn't realize that in the back door we were piggybacking on or doing a transaction that may relate to it. and then allowing their transaction to go through a couple minutes later. So we could look like geniuses knowing where the market was going or something that was going to happen. And we weren't making monstrous amounts of money. We were making a little bit of money here and there all through. And at the end of the day, it would amount to very large sums of money. And we also had monetary instruments that were provided to us through entities in Louisiana and out of Florida from the Treasury. So we had other money, but we were using this in creative ways. In the course of that, there were some transactions that we could not interfere with because they were protected. And so those transactions had certain number codings that were in the clear that anyone would see, but not realize that those coding numbers were a call sign that told me if I saw those, I had to double check and make sure there weren't other numbers in parts of the transaction that told me that it was a protected transaction. Just seeing the initial number didn't necessarily mean there was a problem. It just meant that I needed to double check. And if I found the other numbers in there, that told me that I had to avoid anything that could interfere with, piggyback on, build off of that transaction because it could interfere with other things that we weren't allowed to touch. So as time went on, there was only a handful of us that even knew these things existed. These other codings were in there. That was done because we had done some initial transactions that did interfere with some of those, and then we were brought online so that we could understand not to make that kind of mistake again. So over time, and after we completed what we did in taking down the ruble, over the years I realized those same codings were in other markets, other specific, say commodities markets. It could be soybeans or corn or something like that, or coffee, whatever, as well as in certain other financial transactions. And so as I looked, I would see the same codes being used. Well, they were using the same codes. It's like having a key code on a computer program. If you knew what the code was, you could add anything to it or go anywhere you needed to. And so without touching them or doing other transactions, I have monitored over the years because it helped me to understand the politics going on between companies and countries and regions and those families who were involved in these financial transactions at another level. So I've monitored it for quite some time, and it's not a simple code. It's not some little 4 or 5 numbers. These are very complex codes, and you need to understand that I'm not talking like Elliott wave where we're looking for a market cycle and we're seeing a market cycle. This is a very precise coded communication. I'm reading somebody else's mail. That's what we're doing here. We're not talking about voodoo. We're not talking about some generic, it's going to market's going to go this way or that way. This is a very precise, this is where I'm going with the transaction, hands off, or chime in other people within the various groups. This is the timing I'm using so you can jump in or avoid me. And those codes were embedded in these transactions. So I've watched this for literally 25 years. And it's helped me to see what's going on, anticipate certain other actions in the geopolitics of the planet. Now, in all of those years, I think one time is all I recall ever even seeing a transaction where it was coded in silver. I've kind of watched, and I've watched about 50 markets pretty regularly because it helps me to see what's going on and kind of having that inside knowledge. It was something from back in the old days. And all of a sudden, on that night that I did the Hagmann show, it just was coincidence that night. That was May 2nd. In silver, I saw a coding, and I thought, let me take a look. I mean, I thought it had been bouncing around in that area, and nothing had been going on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And let me take a look. And sure enough, bang, like a neon light, there's code. I went, oh my gosh, well, that's serious. And then that was end of day on that May 2nd. It actually had several codes that built on each other, but there's one huge code through the day. So I sent a text to several people, about a half dozen people, and just said, that I had seen something that was coded. It was very interesting in silver, and it was, I felt, very serious. On Monday, the next business day, the opening statement is the statement coming from the banks involved doing the fix on the silver, that they were shutting down the silver fix as of August 14th. The very next business day, now to any of that handful of insiders who are working using the coding, and it's not just 5 or 6, there's 5 or 6 of us, but within those families, it's probably somewhere between 100 and 200 people. Those business corporate families is just a rough guess. And all of them working in the blind, not knowing who the other ones are necessarily. And but for the very next business day to open with a statement that built on what I had just told the handful of people, oh my gosh, there it is. And V, you could look, and Doug, you could look, and you'd see that the date was before the announcement. Anybody on the planet in the public realm had heard one thing about the silver VIX being dropped. It was stunning. It was out of the blue. Now, to those insiders who may have been preoccupied because they're involved in other markets, other geopolitics, other things, what was that? That was like a flashbang, neon flashing light. Pay attention here. Go look. And the first thing any of those people would have done is they'd have gone to the last couple of days of trading, and if they understand they're looking for any kind of communications, backline communications, first thing they're seeing, last transaction of the day, last message that was sent. Oh, my gosh. If they run the code, they didn't know, oh, my gosh, I get the message. Because that was like, pay attention. Now, subsequent to that, there were 2 more coded times that it came through in the silver markets. And the sum of the 3 times, the time period between them was 21 days. But they didn't happen evenly. And then there were other communications or other information within those communications that were very interesting on certain of the numbers. And I thought some of the numbers were very, very interesting, but reinforced in a very precise, specific way the data that came through on that very first coded message. Each of those 3 are actually aimed at 3 different types of groups trading. One was for those that are holding the physical product silver, or should be. One was for those that are trading related to the paper products, and one was for those involved in the actual mining processes and stocks. And so all 3 groups were coded separately, but with essentially a code that was a take your position and, batten down the hatches and get ready type of thing, and with the same date, which was a start date. It's like the bus stops at the bus stop at such and so time. Well, the bus, leaves the bus stop on July 15th. In fact, a very precise time on July 15th. And the interesting thing about July 15th is it's a reporting date. It's a reporting date for the end of the previous quarter, the second quarter of the year. And so there's information that may come through that would affect that. That's a pretty normal thing. And in fact, in other codes, I've seen that pretty commonly to be a reporting date related to a quarter. In all of this conversation, the main point here is it doesn't tell you a precise place that silver is going to be. It doesn't give you all the rest of the information because this is a conversation. And with this particular coding, now there will be other coding that I probably won't be privy to because it will happen in different places in different ways or come through as more of a day code. And so as I understand it and anticipate it, you're going to see a lot of volatility increase in silver. Silver is normally very volatile when it's moving anyway. But this was that was a start date. Now, that doesn't mean that silver on July 15th goes to outer space or does anything really dramatic. It's about getting in position for a series of changes that would be coming, and throughout the fall and probably through next year. But these are what I would call, in this particular case, a longer move. The other interesting thing that I had seen in another market that's related, and I'm not going to say precisely where it's at, other than it affects the dollar. On April 5th, there was another coding that had come through, and it's what I call a long wave. It's not a market timing thing, or some generic, we're reading the voodoo signs and they tell us to do this. It's a very precise signal on a direction, and that as a turning point. And that happened on April 5th as a turning point for other stuff that was going to occur. And it's interesting that all these things in the Mideast really began to turn strongly at that point in time. So with very precise information, they're communicating to each other to get locked in positions before a certain date, and then essentially once you're on the bus, you'll get more communication type thing once you're safely ready to take this journey. What those communications are going to be, we can speculate somewhat, we can anticipate. There is certain information in there that does give me some specifics, but I'm going to hold that back, other than to say that the short version is expect a downturn in the dollar that's going to be pretty, obvious and steady, related to petroleum, related to the petrodollar, and related to the silver. And the silver and the dollar are going to be working syncopatically, but going at cross purposes, going in different directions, and that they're going to be building off each other. Part of the reason this is interesting is because classically you would be looking at, say, gold. Have gold, you got to have gold, or buy oil, a crisis, buy oil. And silver's been the ugly stepchild. And they've actually gone out of their way to keep it super low on the volatility. And these guys are greedy. They want something that they can get for next to nothing or less. So immediately after those codings and after the announcement the silver fix was over with, silver weakened. And I expect it to weaken again once or twice before we get to the hard dates, and then begin this march up through spikes. Do I know precisely how it's going to go? I haven't got a clue. We'll find out as we get there, because we're reading somebody else's mail, and they're adjusting. They have a plan in place, but they also, in the course of that plan, know some of the gyrations they intend to do, and we may or may not intercept all of that mail. We'll just have to see. But clearly, as far as I'm concerned, and based on what I saw, silver, which is like out in left field, suddenly is going to be very, very important. And it does make sense if you go back and look at silver's historical place in society, in nations, in finance, in monetary worlds. Silver's always had a place, and they suddenly have no place for a period of time. They're about to come out of the background, and that's maybe the rest of the story that we can talk about. You want to take it, V?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that's a credible threat to the dollar itself. I mean, you look at gold. I mean, there's not a lot of people out there that can buy gold in any sort of sizable means. But when we talk about silver, we're talking about something that it can be acquired by someone with very little means. I mean, today, silver is about $19.70 an ounce. So this is something that's readily available. This is something that people can get a hold of. They can get a hold of it rather quickly. So, this is one of the things that, when me and W talked about was how oftentimes when you have these banksters and you have these rulers, these guys who are the power behind the throne, they would always like to position themselves that not only do they make money on the booms, but also on the bust, which is pretty obvious to everybody. But in this particular situation, it's pretty unique. And what I mean by that is this. They are positioning themselves that they will control, what we've talked about before in prior shows, is controlling the exit doors or controlling the lifeboats. If you control the exit doors or the lifeboats, you can dictate who gets on or who gets out. You can dictate how much money can be made. Now, look at what the Fed has announced recently. They went ahead and they've announced that if you want to get out of the bond market, they're going to make an exit fee. So they're getting things ready where they will make money on the exit when people are leaving paper and jumping into hard assets. So the signal and the code that W's gotten and the information that I've gotten is basically telling people, listen, get ready, get yourself prepared, get yourself positioned. Because, just like gold is getting tightened, its supplies and its inventories are drying up. Folks, it's the same thing with silver. I mean, any given week, any given day in the United States, there's only about, there's not that much silver floating around. There really isn't. So being prepared for this great transition is something that's imperative. It's about having the portability. It's about having that mobility in order to move, in order to survive. Because a great many of us will survive this. We'll come out the other end, but you have to be prepared. Doug, Joe, or W?
Well, let me just give you some thoughts on silver. What's the deal with silver? Look, if you have gold coins, let's say, or gold bars, what are you going to buy? A house? Are you going to buy a car? You got to be able to do small trades. You might need to, buy a passage on a boat or a few gallons of gas or something like that. If you don't have small enough divisible quantities, you're going to have to give up a gold bar to get a few gallons of gas. How are you going to do that? The silver is able to be broken down into smaller monetary units. It's also because it is less valuable for these fairly mobile units you might carry in your pocket. The likelihood somebody wants to counterfeit, say, pre-65 coins, is the money. The counterfeit's going to cost the original. There's no easy way to do it. It's hard to think something and end up with something that looks like a real pre-65 coin, and duplicate it in a way that you can't detect easily, that the average person can't detect. That's one of the reasons why I like the pre-65 coins, for example. Even silver ingots or bars and stuff like that, if you did get caught by surprise, in a remote situation, you're not giving away the farm necessarily. You're dealing with gold, you got tungsten and all sorts of other things in there. Some of those transactions could get pretty dicey for people. And to get your gold from one place to another, somebody's going to beat you over the head for it. If you got a couple coins in your pocket, the pressure, the motivation for somebody to try and do something goes down pretty dramatically. So, it's pretty important to think about what's the value, say, of an inexpensive silver transaction. With smaller units, something that's easily recognizable. So as we go into a falling dollar and some kind of social chaos and monetary paper chaos, the average Joe, the average Doug, the average listener on this show, he can probably appropriate and conduct transactions in silver a lot more readily and have it make a lot more sense than he's going to be able to do the same with gold or some other precious, valuable metal that's hard for him to get or hard to break up into small quantities, etc. So silver could make a lot of sense, and that's partially what's being communicated here, is that we're being told that a change is coming related to paper. Now, that April 5th coding related to paper. The code midway after the May 2nd coding related to the paper transactions. And what we're seeing is a loss in trust with paper transactions. That's the key thing that I think people have to get in their mind immediately. What's the greatest crisis brewing, not just in America, but in the world right now? This loss of trust of anything, paper or electronically recorded, that is your asset, where you're not physically holding the asset. Why? Because, we're talking about the mortgages. Okay, how trustworthy is the paperwork that you have on your mortgage? How provable is it? So is the chain of custody broken? What about on your stocks? What about on even your silver certificates or gold certificates of deposit based on the flood there at Water Street in New York? You have very serious credibility issues with all of these paper instruments. And in that moment, as these truths come out to the public, as more and more people recognize the way that the paper and electronic records have been convoluted, churned, intentionally muddied, they're going to begin to worry and not want to trust paper money in an account somewhere that's denominated with dots and tittles on a computer screen. So what's the cure going to be? Well, the obvious cure is gold. But what's the less obvious cure that's in the same realm and makes more sense for a much larger portion of the population? Silver. Do you know that 90% of all the silver mined on planet Earth has been used up in commercial purposes, while virtually 100% ever mined in, history of man, modern man, is still above ground laying on a vault somewhere, on a pallet somewhere. The silver is much more usable. It's used all the time in industry. It has great utilitarian value, and it's easy to convey to persons in smaller quantities from a work standpoint or for transactions, etc. That's why silver in many languages means money. That's the same word for money, currency, is silver. And what are some of the other features of silver? Silver, think of all these paper instruments. They're like a boil on our economy. They're like a sore. It's infected. It's pussy. It's diseased. All of this lying paper that we are getting inundated with in our society, in our countries, around the world. It's like pus sores all over our, national bodies. Well, what's the classic treatment for infection before we had antibiotics and everything else? What was the natural antibiotic? Monatomic silver. Water that has been charged electrically and charged with a silver component in it. And that silver is a disinfectant. What is the disinfectant for the disease of paper, money, and lying paper transactions for all of our listeners whose lives, are at risk? It's silver, something tangible that's easily transferable, that's recognizable, that's not easy to counterfeit. And so in this moment when people are going to have a harder and harder time trusting the paper, trusting the person with the paper, they're going to naturally shift to other things that are more recognizably trustworthy. Does that mean every transaction, buy a new car with silver? Probably not. But more and more people are going to recognize they need to have that lifeboat. And what's being coded is these guys want to get ahead of what's about to happen and take a position, and they're going to make some money off the people trying to find an exit into something safer. you'll probably hear more communications talking about it.
With that, W, we're up against the top of the hour break. We're going to take that now. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this.
Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Two very special guests, the guerrilla economist, his website, roguemoney.net, and, of course, W, the the intelligence insider. I got to tell you, the two guys, I'm glad, are on our side. Of course, you heard W explain the special, the coding, I guess you would call it, kind of like I explained it, right? Yeah, right. No, it's pretty interesting reading other people's mail surveillance, if you will, on the communications between certain elite individuals, shall we say. And, of course, the benefits of silver. Hang on a second. Let me take that silver spoon out of Joe's mouth there. Yeah, okay. And that's where the saying, by the way, comes from, silver spoon in your mouth. But I'm going to turn this back over. We're going to turn this back over to I think we'll turn it over to V here at this point. But I will say this. We're back up. We're strong. We have been getting reports of DDoS as well as Trojan-type situations going on. At this point now, it's catch us if you can, because perhaps, I'm not going to say you won't, but it's going to be a challenge for you to do so. Glad to have you guys back. And if we, for some reason, drop off, we have it fixed so you guys can just keep on going. So it's just a great thing. B,
copy that.
It's up to you.
Doug, could you hear me? Hello?
We can. Yes, we can.
Yeah,
okay, fantastic. Sorry about that. Well, guys, one of the things I want to point out to the audience here, for the last year or so, I've been really hammering home the point of the absolute fallacy of paper, the illusion of paper. Now, one of the things I've always said is the banksters, those who are in power, always seek to have the most amount of control in paper because paper is something that's manipulable. Okay, you can manipulate paper in so many different ways, folks, and that is why that the revelation upon revelation upon revelation upon revelation that's been pouring out of the financial industry since 2008. That's why it's finally started to ring home with some people that these individuals who claim to have our best interests at heart, who claim to manage our funds in order to have the right performing stock, and it's all about the customer, it's all about the performance, they're starting to realize that it's not about that. It's about what's in it for me when it comes to these bigwig CEOs and these banksters, okay? And so the absolute fraud of paper is out in the open in such a huge, big way. We've seen revelations occur within the last year about high-frequency trading, and the absolute devilish mechanism and danger that HFTs are, and how it really poses to the industry as a whole. So massive different moves of people where they're just not believing. Where you have gentlemen like Greg Morris who've come on and who've exposed the entire mortgage fraud. We've heard about subprimes. Now we're realizing it's not just subprimes, it's much more. So, folks, what I'm saying is that once you figured out that it's just one level, okay, you realize it's multiple levels. It's multiple levels upon multiple levels, and the fraud, the absolute cancer, the rot has absolutely set in the entire Western banking system. And it's being done this way, folks, for a reason. Okay? They knew that eventually that XYZ instrument is going to have an expiration date, that you could only run a particular operation, a particular stunt for so long before it falls off. And now this stunt that we're using called fiat currency and all the vehicles and all the rudiments that are attached to that are being undone. And those things have reached expiration date. And that's why the world has awoken in such a massive way and began to push against the dollar. The push against not just the dollar, but paper in general. There's enough of a crisis that has been created that the world is clamoring for honesty in trade, honesty in banking, honesty in transactions, honesty in investments, honesty in savings. These are things that the world is clamoring for. They've never clamored for this before. Now, the point I'm trying to make of this, folks, is this. These things are being allowed to happen. These revelations that I've spoken about of one scandal upon another, I'm not even going to call it scandal. One criminal activity on top of another criminal, let's call it what it is. One criminal activity on top of the other. Over the course of the last 6 years, because Americans are starting to wake up, and the world is waking up and starting to figure out, hey, this quote-unquote recession that ended on back in June of 2009, it's not over. This is being allowed, folks. The dirty laundry is being allowed to be hung out to dry so that everybody could witness it. Because why? They want you to be disgusted, those of you that are awake, to be disgusted by paper. They want nations of the world to have the chaos stirred in within them, to have their very foundation shaken, so they can all of a sudden look for something else. And believe you me that the purveyors, the real orchestrators of this, that are multiple levels above the banksters, above even those that are in the City of London, that those individuals are there. Their tentacles are the ones that are pulling the strings to make sure that they are ready and prepared, not only to make an absolute killing on the prophets, but be there to offer the very solution and the framework for this entire thing. You know, one of the things that W talks about is, you know, me and him, we've had conversations where we talk about it's like sports teams. You got owners, you got owners that own that are all league owners, let's say the NFL, and no matter which team competes in the Super Bowl, it's the owners that win. You got owners. And you can kind of see, and I've seen this from my own data as well, working in banking and finance, that at a particular level, it literally is owners, power brokers at the top, and they own these countries. And they play this vast game, east versus west, north versus south. I mean, you call it what you want. And it's kind of funny, and I want W to touch on this, because this is one of the things that one of my guys over in the City of London talked about. He said, it's amazing. It just seems that the Rockefeller arm is really starting to win. And I said, well, what do you mean? Well, it's like, look at the moves on oil. That's an indicator right there. And look at how many Rothschilds are being exposed and kicked out of countries. I said, that's an interesting point. Because it just seems like the pieces that are owned by the Rockefellers at this time are doing quite good. And I'm talking about the Russians. I'm talking about the Chinese. And it seems like the pieces that are owned by the Rothschilds, I'm talking about the European Union, the U.S., UK, not doing so well. So this is what it's talking about, folks. This is a bit of information I've given out tonight that I haven't really mentioned before.
Well, let me chime in here for just half a second here.
Go ahead, brother.
You and I had conversations even a couple of years back, and we discussed. I explained the methodologies, the way that the different families hedge their bets and what their philosophies are as to how their investment will win one over the other based on, how they invest, what they're, invested in, and including politically. And this administration, this crowd that we have right now is absolutely a Rothschild crowd. And the banking groups that have prevailed have been Rothschild banking groups here in the West, J.P. Morgan, et cetera. The Rockefeller crowd, really it is the Clinton crowd. Where's Rockefeller Central, Arkansas, largest landholder in Arkansas, and where's Bill from? And Hillary. So, it doesn't get much more Rockefeller than that. And, of course, there certainly is a belief in many circles that Bill is actually child of Winthrop Rockefeller. And there's reasons to believe that his mom thought so too. So, at the end of the day, though, it's a moot point. I'm not really too concerned about it. Whatever it is, it is. At the end of the day, there is different groups, families. It's not just those two. There's a number of families involved here, and they're all competing for position. But to a lot of outsiders, it looks like they're competing to the death. That's not at all what's going on. They look at this competing for position very much so like a horse race. They're not killing each other off. They're seeing who gets to win today. And they're bringing their best horse and trying to win against the other families. But at the end of the day, they all go back to the paddock, and at some level, they own the track, so they're all winners because everybody else comes to bet at their casino.
Is this one sport? None?
Yeah. In any arena.
Is this like like a family card game to them? I mean, what you just said to me, you've told me this before, but I think this needs to be repeated. What we're seeing is theater. This is really soft entertainment. World Federation of Wrestling or whatever, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, at a certain level, but at another level, it is deadly serious. Amongst themselves, they're playing to win, to survive. The rest of us are cannon fodder. They don't really need us. We are, the unwashed masses. This isn't about saving us. This is about, saving themselves, perpetuating themselves, and using us up to a certain point, and then they're done with us, or we get too numerous or too heady or too much of a problem, and we make sure we wipe each other out and start over. And so, and one thing, let's go back for just a second. Something V said, I should have added one more thing. In the coding that I've been watching, and the reason I called the thing in April 5th the long code, there's certain things that are built on stuff that occurred back with what we were doing in the 80s, that there were huge transactions that affected economy throughout the whole world at the nation-state level. So, for example, when we completed what we were doing, and a lot of the work was done in Japan, using, Japanese banks and yen, etc. I remember one of my associates on the day that we made the change, the final change we were making in what we were doing in the Japanese markets. He says, well, this is going to kill the Japanese stock market. And I said, yeah, it's going to hurt them. They're going to feel it pretty bad. He says, no, it's going to kill them. And he said, a day and an hour. And I thought about it for about 100 millionth of a second. I says, yeah, it's about the right time. That's when it'll hit. You're right. And sure as we're sitting here, that's exactly what had happened. Now, based on that, and the rest was history. They went into a spin that they have been fighting ever since. Subsequent to that, there was another moment when we expected an Asian market collapse, something broader, and I'd said, well, we got to get this out of the way. I'd talked with a number of key people to discuss the problem after the wall fell, and said, we got to get ahead of this, and the intent was to come back and fix these things so that it wouldn't cause damage down the road. Nothing was done, and as it got closer and closer, 4 or 5 years out, and I had mentioned to a person, a very famous person, especially at the time, and I told him the day and hour. I said, the problem is that's they're going to look at another collapse that's going to be horrible on this specific date. And he was just shocked that I could be that specific. How can you be that specific? I said, because that's when the instruments mature, the first wave of them that are of any significance that begin hitting these markets. And if we don't do something before then, which apparently nobody's going to do anything about, we're going to act like we didn't do this, then we're going to have chaos on that date. Not that year, not sometime around then. That date, that exact hour when the reporting stuff comes through the pipeline, it's going to cause chaos. Well, years later, when it happened, exactly to the hour, minutes really, of what I'd said, and he picks up the phone and he calls me out of the blue and says, "Do you remember when we had that conversation? You said blah, blah." I says, "Yeah. I wasn't sure you remembered." "Well, I can't believe it. You're right. You're right." I says, "Well, did you do anything about it?" No. Well, you'd be a trillionaire if you'd done something, if you'd listened to me. But he just couldn't believe it could be true. How can nobody can know that much? Well, you can if you know what you wrote. You can if you know what was programmed in. So now, I'm telling you, there's a program here.
Correct.
This isn't just voodoo. It's not a magic act around the crystal ball. We're not just gazing at, it's a program. It's very precise. There's exact cogs and wheels turning and twisting, and they're hitting in exact precise times. It's a clock. It's a financial clock instrument. And the crisis is that even in the coding that just came through, what was so stunning to me, and this was one of the conversations I had about 2 weeks later with V, and I think you were in on it at some point there, Doug, and I said, when I ran the numbers, it was about a week and a half later, I ran the numbers again, trying to go to see if what I had missed, because I got a second code and I went, oh my gosh, yeah, this is for real. This is absolutely serious. There's no mistake. This is huge. And so I went back through and I started crunching the numbers, and I went back into my old stuff from the old days, and then I realized, oh my gosh, the dates on the hits are exactly a certain number separation from the original one based on the way that the instruments were rewritten after the first crisis in 96, after the 89 crisis. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're building off of that date. And the key number in there was an 18. And I'm just going, oh my gosh, 18666, give me a break. Everywhere, and I went through other stuff, it cross-references in several ways. But I'm just looking at it going, it's precise. It's a chronos. It's a clock. And all of those instruments, all of that paper's out there waiting to hit with precision. And then I'm looking at all these other markets that we've been talking about, things that have been happening, and then I realized, well, it's like, the grain sifting through an hourglass. And then the stuff that we did hits the freaking hourglass like a silver bullet and breaks the whole thing to smithereens on a precise date. Why? Because it doesn't matter how much this stuff is a problem. It's out there. It's toxic, and it's building up. There's all this momentum. At that date, it's done. And so these groups leave nothing to chance. There's always a backup for the backup. It's like the World Trade Center buildings. They might have had a Judy Wood way of taking those buildings down with other technology that isn't in the clear for the rest of the world for the most part. But they also had nano thermite technology present that was a backup just in case the other one didn't work. Those buildings were coming down no matter what. And if that didn't work, somehow those buildings were coming down. It's like Syria. No matter what. You think we got them nipped in the bud, we got them closed down coming in from the west. They got a plan to come in from the east. It might be plan D, E, F, G, but they got a plan because it's going to happen no matter what. It cannot not happen because their bigger plan builds off of it. And what's their bigger plan? A new world order. And the finances is the backbone to it. Why the finances? Because everything you do in your life, in this modern society, breaks down to a number, a value. that you exchange your labor for, and then you can go exchange it for their paper, their dots and tittles, quatloos, whatever you want to call it, on a computer screen, and then you're allowed to take those and go get something from somebody else because they're the medium of exchange. And what this moment is all about is for some of these insiders, they're getting ahead of you because they know the paper is worthless. It's not worth nothing. It's worth less every day. And so they're going to get out of the way because it's about to be worth a whole lot less, a whole lot faster than it's been doing for a while. And so for the time being, they're going to go to a tangible while they're doing these other manipulations, and they'll come back to their paper and dots and tittles on a computer screen in a short while. But in the meantime, for them, they're about to go cash in some of their winnings at the money door. They're going to go over to the change cashier. They're going to cash in some of their paper chips, their plastic chips, and they're going to quatloos, and they're going to turn it into real silver. And they're going to play with that for a little bit and let you catch up. And you're going to want their silver because they've got silver. They're not doing with gold because everybody's got gold right now. They got all the gold they needed right now. And the gold's highly inflated. They're going to take the uninflated one, make some money with that for a bit. They'll come back to gold in a bit. In the meantime, they're going to bring the silver up where it's supposed to be.
Is there a kind of a symbology built into the silver as well, being a transformative metal type thing in the transformation of our economy?
Yep. Well, silver is the best conductor of current, electricity. And so within a society, there's a symbology to using silver at a transformational moment that's different than what you're doing with gold. Gold is about holding and keeping and having. It's an anchor. Silver is about doing, functioning. It's the transmutational metal. It conducts the current from one location to another, and stuff happens. It's the industrial one. They're still building out their New World Order machine. So for this moment, and remember, they're into symbology and type and hidden messages and metaphors. So the silver is a metaphor within their own magic act of what they're doing. It's like, they're doing this concoction in the cauldron, and it calls for total bat. Okay, well, total frog isn't going to work. You got to have total bat, or the magic doesn't work the same. It screws the whole brew up. So right now, the recipe calls, and a dash of silver. And that's what, because we're being worked psychologically. And a lot of this stuff related to how we value our stuff, how we value our labor, how we hold something close to us, we're being played with in that. And part of that, again, is the silver. They keep changing up the game. It's fastball, and then it's an underhand pitch. It's fastball, and then it's a curveball. You're all tuned up. You're looking for everything gold, and oil. Oh, shoot. I didn't see silver coming. And that's what they're doing. So we're seeing an inside code. They're about to change the game a little bit. They're not listening to us. There's only about, a couple hundred of us listeners out there even paying attention. We're not going to move the market. I'm not worried about that. If you realize, okay, and I've got my 401k, and I got my classic car and all that. Look, if you want to have something that will have value, that's going to go up in value a bit over the next couple of years, way disproportionate to everything else, don't be holding it in paper. And by the way, it's not just silver. Silver's the communicated thing for these players. But for your listeners or somebody else, they may need to, get some food set aside, or start looking at what they're going to have, as far as a location to get out of the way, because their business is highly, exposed to paper products. Maybe they're in the insurance industry. Maybe there's some other industry that's highly connected to paper products and transactions. And if there's problems with the paper and it becomes toxic, then maybe their industry gets killed. So they need to think in terms of what am I going to do to protect myself, because part of this is not just that they're coding between themselves and we're reading the mail that they're going to be switching over to some silver stuff. What they're also coding, and that's what I'm saying back to this April 5th date, is that the paper is about to get clipped. It's about to get hit hard. So they're stepping out of the way, and one of the key places that they've coded is in the silver. Now, I have seen codes in other markets, but those have been going on all along and fairly continuously. This is just something that's very new, very precise, and has a very different implication. This is something that's a change-up. That's why I'm saying something, because this is not business as usual. The other stuff happens pretty much business as usual. They've been holding this in reserve. It's like a big football game, and they got one golden play, and they're waiting for just the right circumstances. The scoreboard says, and the other teams in this position, they bring in this lineup on the field. Okay, all right, this is the play we're doing. We're playing right now. Okay, do it. They won't see it coming because we haven't done it all year. That's what I'm saying here. So if you get it, great. If you don't, and by the way, hey, no matter, it's an interesting conversation. There might only be a handful of your listeners, Doug, who are getting some kind of specific direction from God to do something in silver. That's not even my whole message. My message is they're communicating a change, a way of business, something dramatic that they themselves have to get out of the way, get out of an exposed position in one area, move to a less exposed position, hit the sidelines for a minute, take a deep breath, let what's going to happen, then they'll step back in and do it a different way, or they're going to do a little bit of playing in this other table. They're moving from one table to another, the craps table in the casino, for a little bit of time. And it doesn't mean that we should or have to do the same thing. It means that we should be live on our feet, look at your personal situation, realize there's another change-up coming in the game, and do some self-analysis, some personal business, family situation analysis to get ready for it. Now, when this code first came through on May 2nd, we were talking a little bit about the Ukraine, but nobody was talking this latest stuff with Syria, and we certainly weren't talking blowing up pipelines. We could see that there was stuff getting ready to happen. But even there, the most dramatic thing that I am concerned about that also came immediately after that was about the date the decisions were made about what was going to be told as far as instructions at the Bilderberg meeting. Remember, at the Bilderberg meeting, they didn't decide what to do. At the Bilderberg meeting, they were read in on what had been decided to be done. The decisions were finalized during the course of that week, just prior to the May 2nd coding. And May Day is an important day. So that's the preface, and that decision came out immediately thereafter. The Bilderberg thing, those decisions were made at that point in time. And what did I tell you privately, Doug and V, that I believe was the most important thing that came out of the Bilderberg thing? They're going to take hands off on the renegade in chief, and they're going to let everything come at him, and his advisors are going to let everything come at him. And what also happened right then? Press secretary resigns, a change up in the command, and they're going to let everything go. Have at it. Flail away. And he's going to play rope-a-dope. He's going to do what Putin did before the Olympics. He's going to take all your blows. But they're going to let everything come on him. All the sins are going on the administration, and we're going to be so tied up paying attention to that. And that somewhat is what's been going on over the last few weeks. Suddenly there's no emails over at the IRS for those that are lost. Well, how are people going to react to that? All the illegals coming in, well, they've been coming in since last October, but now all of a sudden the announcements are made. It's just horrible. Nobody even heard the latest with the birth certificate stuff out of Kenya that was released with more of the information there. So these things are getting some steam up so that we'll be focused there and our attentions will be focused there, distracting us from other stuff. And what will be the result of all that? A less trust, of Washington and those people who, with their financial maneuverings, made it possible for this crowd to take office. Even the Benghazi stuff, suddenly it's getting momentum. It wasn't there before. Didn't I say that? Who's actually going to be on trial when this Ansar al-Sharia leader goes on trial in Washington, if it ever happens, with all the corrupted evidence they have? The administration. He's not going to be on trial. The administration's going to be on trial. It's going to take place in Washington, D.C. It's going to be an indictment of Hillary and of Obama. It'll be the terrorist name out of it, but the counterpoint to it, everything will be weighed against, well, why did the administration do this? Why didn't they do that? That'll be the counterpoint. It's a revert. You're looking in a mirror. And by the way, what are silvered mirrors? Glass with silver on one side. This is a transformational moment. We see our reflection in everything. They're doing a magic act, a spell, an incantation. They're brewing something. Oh, we need a little drop of silver.
V?
That's interesting that W would bring out the esoteric interpretations of silver. It was actually one of our members on my site who actually made a pretty impressive point. When you look at silver and you look at the time frame of silver, you look at this mid-July date. Okay, silver is, like what W said, it is a transitional metal. It's a great thing to signal a transference of energy. But when you look at silver also, it also coincides with the moon. And when you look at the July, you're having a moon phase that signals in the ancient Egyptian religions and mystery schools over there, a new economic transition. And that new economic transition happens to be July the 15th, happens to be that mid-July date. So it's pretty amazing that you have these signals that are occurring not only in geopolitically, where we're seeing very high-level plays that are being done. We're seeing codes that W mentioned that are coming through that are signaling these events, and we're seeing the spiritual component, the esoteric interpretations of these things. So all these things are culminating, folks, and they are pointing. The data is pointing it's painting a very clear picture, and that's something that I want people to know. Now, I'm not telling everybody to, we're not telling everybody that it's the end of the world here, but it's about preparation. So if this is a signal for those, like, we mentioned before, you have to have an exit strategy. Whether your exit strategy is to get out of paper, whether it is to store up food, whether it's to get out of the country, whatever you need to do, this is important. This is your signal. This is your flag. So what we're doing here, folks, based on the information that W is bringing you, based on the information that I've brought you, it culminates into the same warning message, and that is get ready. That is have your houses in order. That is have your exit plan active. Whatever things that you've had in your life that were tying you down, the business that you just refuse to sell for some strange reason, the home that you think you own, my kids they got to finish college, whatever the heck it is, your retirement plan, your bucket list, whatever have you, whatever it is. Now is the time that you begin to cut the umbilical cord on those things that have been feeding off of you that you think are valuable. And it's time for you to be transitional, so to speak. It's time for you to go through a transition in your thinking, in the way that you live life, and be in a position where you can come out on the other end of this whole entire thing and not be one of the statistics, not be one of the victims of what is going to happen with this incredible transitionary period that's about to befall the earth. And that's the whole thing here, folks, because it is a global game that is being played. It is theater for the profane that is being done. And these are globalist factions on both sides. And if you're thinking this is just good guys versus bad guys, or if this is East versus West, you're not thinking big enough. This is far bigger than that. This is far bigger than just, and folks, if all you've gotten out of tonight is, V and W talking about silver, you missed the point. The game that's being played here, folks, is a game for your soul. That's the game. The game that's being played here, folks, is the control and the power to rule every soul, every man, woman, and child on this planet. That's the game. That's the end game. Everything else, and nations, borders, those are all secondary.
Own those souls, but to take them into hell with them, because these are all demons.
Absolutely.
They're trying to keep you preoccupied playing their game, their rules. You're in their casino at their card tables, and it's a fixed game. You think you're playing an honest game. You're not. And that's the problem. I forwarded to you, Doug, and to you, V, this article by John Hussman that I thought was just a great article he just wrote the other day.
Got it.
And he's a financial guy, just a great author, and he'd be someone to be wonderful to have on the show even. John wrote an article, and he was noting how the market right now is very similar to the 29 market that's, this classic one we all look at, and to other moments when the market collapsed previously, even up till recently. And he eliminates the downside of the chart, and he just looks at the upside. And he shows that the chart's identical, really, to all of these other favorable markets, going up. And it's not until you see the downside you realize, yes, it's identical going up and going back down. But he calls this, he identifies it with this Siphius, who was the guy that Zeus placed under a curse, where he had this task to roll this rock to the hill. So he'd get it right almost to the top of the hill, and then boom, he'd lose his grip, it'd slip, and it'd go all the way right back down to the bottom. And you got all these people in the financial realm. They're trying to build their financial house, their, rock solid retirement fund, and get their real estate all just right so they can retire and enjoy life, and everything's going to be perfect. And they almost get there, and then these guys do a little market correction, throw some mud on the side of the hill, they do a slip, and their whole thing goes right back down to the bottom, and they have to start all over again. And it's a repeating cycle, and that's the curse for Siphius. How many families, how many individuals in our audience are people who could relate to that story because of some personal experience, and then things went sideways? The devil had you working so hard, and you had the high expectation and hope, and Siphius keeps coming back and doing it over and over, because as he gets closer and closer to the top, hope reigns eternal. This time I'm going to do it. And every time, same thing. So now we look at this situation just ahead of us and forget any secret insider coding messages. Forget silver and all the other stuff. Just look at this crowd and realize that on the face, on the numbers, did they do anything to fix the economy back in 2008? Yeah, they did, as a matter of fact. It's fixed. Oh, geez. It's fixed like a horse race. They've injected it every way you can inject it. It's fixed to blow. They didn't fix it to fix and correct the problem. They fixed it so they could have another winning down the road. Not only then, but out ahead. You're dealing with the mob, the political mob, the financial mob. And let me just introduce a term. that I gave to V a few weeks back, and for an author that's doing an article for us. And that term comes from this. Look at all the bubbles that we're surrounded with. Now, there's a lot of people talking about the mortgage bubble. We've talked about it. Okay, that could be the end of everything. The mortgage bubble is it. Well, wait a second. We got a bunch of false paper, a bunch of lost paper on the metals trades, don't we, V? Isn't that what in part got disappeared between a flood and a fire? It all got disappeared back there at 55 Water Street. Remember that?
Absolutely.
I mean, they destroyed all of the financial records on who owns which bullion on which pallet and which location. How can you ever? People think that they have silver certificates or they have stocks that somehow part of the holdings are based in silver deposits or gold deposits in a vault somewhere. Well, who owns that? We're not sure. We're still sorting it out. They lost all the records, even stocks. And by the way, so there's a bubble there that could blow any second. By the way, let me ask you a question, V. With the way the stocks are traded, and I'll bet you there's a handful of brokers out there, I'm going to make their eyes roll in their head right now. But let's think about this. We've seen the false paper transactions that have been going on all through the markets around the world. And what's happened is that we're not sure that these mortgages, for example, because it's an easy thing the audience is familiar with right now, that a mortgage actually might have 10 people holding on to the same house in some way, shape, or form, all saying, I own that house. A guy in the stock market and the stock trading fund, and then a bank that's traded on that stock fund has used it for security, and then an individual who thinks he's got, 20%, 50% equity in the house that's been making the payments all along, and the bank says, well, actually, we own it, and the investment house says we own it, and the MERS people say we own it. You got a whole bunch of people saying they own it, and then they've all gone out and got loans against it. So some other bank says we own the paper that these guys own that is paper denominated right here. So you got these just layers and layers of multiple transactions all on the same base asset. But let's try a different route on this. Stock trades. So you have different stocks that are being traded, and there's only, let's say, on a given day, you mentioned the mining stocks. So let's just deal with a simple mine. Maybe the mine has, 100 million shares outstanding, and half of it is owned by grandmas and grandpas who have it in their safe somewhere, and they never do anything with it. It just sits there. And yet, on a given day, we might go in there and look and see that on the volatility, it traded 100 million shares today. Well, how did it trade 100 million shares when there's only 100 million shares outstanding? Well, because somebody is doing multiple trades with the stock, and they're playing with it. They're pumping it. And then for a couple of days period, one guy's trading it to another guy's trading it to another guy's trading it to another guy. Well, none of those guys actually get the original stock certificate. Normally, the actual physical paper in the old days had to go to the person who was the buyer within a certain number of days to the brokerage house. And so when you're doing all these trades built on trades, it's kind of like kiting your checks. You put $100 in the bank, and you have 20 checks in your checking checkbook, so you go write 20 checks for $20,000. Well, they don't hit it right away, and then you go put more money in and cover the first check it got there, and then just before that one gets in, you take that money, you cycle it back in to cover the next one, you go back and pay the other person, and you do something else, and you're kiting the checks. You're playing with air, and you're running around covering the checks just an instant before the next one hits. But now you go into this and you look and you say, oh, yeah, but here's an interesting thing. Let's say that I have a pipe, and it's a 1 foot around pipe, and it's only got to go 6 feet across the room. So at any given moment, there's 6 feet of water, 6 cubic feet of water in that pipe. But now let's say that I double the length of the pipe. Oh, now I got, 12 feet of water in the pipe. That's sitting. But let's say that we decide to measure it not just how much water is in there when we pour it out, but what if we say, I'm going to run water through it and get however much water I can get through that pipe at this speed in 10 seconds. Okay, I get, 20 buckets of water. Now I speed the water up, the flow of the water. I double the flow of the water, and maybe I get double as many buckets in the other end. And so I speed the water up anymore. Maybe get 4 times the buckets of water at the other end. It's still the same length of pipe, but I'm pumping the water through really fast. But now, what if I make that pipe a mile long, 10 miles long, 20 miles long? How much water can be sitting in the pipe? Even if I run it as fast as it goes, at the other end, any given second, maybe I still only get 20 or 30 or 40 buckets of water out in the same 10 seconds. But if I look and see how much water is in all of those pipes, there might be millions of gallons of water just sitting in the pipes waiting to get out. You know what that is? That's all the computer programs trading the stocks moment to moment, back and forth between all the trading houses. What's happening? On that 100 million shares from a mining company, there might be 1 billion, 10 billion transactions that have been done, everybody waiting for it. And what they're doing, it used to be there was only a little bit of a transaction and you had to produce the paper. Now they're doing these high-speed transactions. They're churning and churning and churning. Nothing ever gets completely resolved. Where are all the transactions? They're all in computer programs. If the computers were just stopped putting anything more in, all the transactions have to come out and be resolved, we might find out that a bunch of people were trading paper that didn't exist. Not just a little bit, 20, 30, 100 times more shares than were ever created were honestly traded between trading houses. What's your 401k retirement plan made up of? What's your union retirement pension fund made up of? And who's churning those stocks around? And by the way, you think the mob somehow got religion after it got in charge of the unions as opposed to running Vegas? You're trusting these guys with your retirement? And by the way, who was put in charge of the New York Fed under this administration? A union guy. He's had no banking experience. The mob got one of their guys in charge of the Fed in New York. What do you think they got planned for the dollar? Has anyone ever gotten this administration to give an answer, not even a straight answer, an answer, any answer? Is it your policy to kill the dollar, as reported by Mr. Bass, that an administration official, a high administration official, told him was the plan? We're just going to kill the dollar. How are you going to respond to all these markets in China and everything with the cost differentials and the production and all the paper they're holding? We're just going to kill the dollar. If they come looking for their money, they're going to find out the dollar's dead, so they're not getting nothing. That's your plan to take care of your creditors? Yep, we're just going to kill the dollar. Oh, but what about all those people with pension funds and retirement plans? All those people that are looking for government benefits and to be taken care of? Well, yeah, you got to crack a few eggs if you're going to make an omelet. Yeah, and they might be a little tough, but we'll deal with that when we get there. If you're not feeling the tingle in your legs of weakness in the knees, hello, you're not paying attention. You will get run over. The tank is going to run right over you, and it's not even going to care. And the guy in the tank, you can wave your briefcase, he's just going to run over you. He's under orders. You're gone. If you're dumb enough to stand in front of the tank, you're toast. That's this moment. What we're trying to get you to rethink is how you are protecting yourself, how you see yourself protecting yourself. What are you doing? Are you doing it on stuff that's real, tangible, or are you doing it on paper promises, which aren't even worth the paper they're printed on? When they wanted to destroy the paper documents at 55 Water Street, it wasn't enough to flood the building with the Atlantic Ocean. They had to turn around a month and a half later and burn the building. They were leaving nothing to chance. What do you think they're going to do with your pension, your stock certificates, your future, your retirement, your mortgage? If you're not realizing, and what am I telling you? They just sent a little secret insider code, hand wink. Okay, now, switch to something tangible. This is musical chairs. They're giving a wink to you ahead of the rest of the people running around the chairs going to get ready to say, get a chair now, I'm about to shut off the music. That's what they just told their buddies. Get a chair now, we're going to turn off the music. Get out of the way. Stop playing around. Stop pretending to listen, or don't make one complaint to me or anybody else who warned you when, I don't understand, and they ruined everything, I don't have nothing. Well, I told you to get out of the way. What, you trusted the mobsters? I went to my godfather, and he said he was going to take care of me at the Union Hall. I went to my politician, and they promised they were going to make sure that we had our money to take care of us in our old age, and that we were going to have our health care. Yeah, you're going to have health care. Right to the grave. They're going to health care you right into the grave a little faster.
As well as
they want the money. They're not going to support you. They want to support them.
Yeah. Exactly. We're going to forego the top of the hour break. We're going to go into this overtime here a little bit. V, go ahead and respond to what W said. He brought a lot of information to the table just now. I don't want to lose the momentum that we've built up here. V, go ahead and respond accordingly.
Well, it's important that people understand what's W talking about in 55 Water Street. 55 Water Street right down here is what we call the DTCC. That is the central depository of every stock certificate, every bond certificate, every ETF certificate, you name it, mortgages. It's all held here on 55 Water Street. Now, when you're talking about the flood, we had a convenient anomaly, a massive superstorm that hit New York, about a year ago, called Hurricane Sandy. And that, ripped through the Jersey Shore, absolutely tore into Manhattan. We've never seen anything, any sort of a hurricane ever. It literally landed itself in Manhattan. And it flooded the vault. Folks, one thing I want to tell you this, vaults do not flood. Those vaults are designed to be waterproof. You don't flood a vault. It's impossible. But all of a sudden the vault gets flooded. The vast majority of the documents are ruined. They're damaged beyond repair. You can't see who owns what. The ink is smudged. Just ruined. And just in case that flood wasn't enough to do the job, just a few weeks later, almost about a month later, you've had a fire in which 21 people were injured. Okay? And they set fire to that vault. Now, they said, oh, yeah, it's an electrical issue from the flood. This is the kind of stuff that happens. And while that's being done, you're having individuals, certain banksters that are dropping dead. Like today, we've had CEO of Rockefeller and Company found dead with a gunshot wound to his head. I think that gentleman's name is James McDonald. And what's he involved with? Euronext. What's the connection with Euronext? Well, you got Euroclear. And who's Euroclear? Well, Euroclear is the European equivalent of DTCC. So when W was talking about, you have these mortgages and all these things that were chopped up and sold all over the world, it wasn't just in Wall Street. They sold this stuff literally all over the world. So the chain of title that Greg Morris was on the show, he talked about it. He said, the chain of title is broken. Folks, it's shattered. It's not broken. It's shattered to 1,000 pieces. You see, you need to get over your paper obsession. You need to get over the fact that, you think that you got a piece of paper in your wall thinking that it's got some sort of value because it's got a face of a dead president on it. It doesn't. And these guys are ruthless. They're playing for keeps. They're closing off all the loopholes. They're tying up all the loose ends. They're prepared to. They're playing for keeps. They're serious about this. They're going to make a killing in this transition. They're making their moves in this global chess game that they're controlling. And that's the whole thing, folks. I mean, you want to talk about rigging. I mean, rigged on every single level. When you have these con artists, these con men, look at the Fed. What did the Fed say about rising interest rates? I'm sorry. Rising interest rate, rising inflation. Oh, they just call it just noise. Those are their own words. What about the inflation? What about the fact that you have prices in the supermarket going through the roof on ground beef, on average everyday grocery items? Oh, it's just noise. It's just noise. It's just noise. Because paper is not real, folks. It makes those who handle paper out of touch with reality. Out of touch. Totally. And the idiot, Tim Geithner, who was the moron who said, hey, we're going to kill the dollar. That joke of an individual. When these guys have no plans on paying back the Chinese and the Russians and all their creditors, the creditors know that. That's why their creditors are setting up an entire global trade network bypassing the dollar. Because they're done with it. They're setting up SDRs setting up gold and other commodities like silver as a reserve and also as a trade settlement. They're doing all this because they're sick of it. But I just don't get the average American. The average American's still out of touch because he still thinks he has freedom. He still thinks that his vote counts. He still thinks that, hey, I'm getting a paycheck every week. Everything is fine. Everything will get back to normal. The biggest signs, overtly and covertly, have been given. The biggest plays, overtly, covertly, some in your face, as an explosion on the largest pipeline in Europe, is happening in front of you. How much of this is causing you to react, not in fear, but in steeled resolve? Not in weakness, but in willingness to do the right things, the necessary things to move yourself and your family out of harm's way. That's the question we need to ask here. This is a moment of soul searching. It's not just the typical economic news that, I'm going to take and beat it over your head with numbers all day. I don't want to do that. W is doing a wonderful job just painting the picture on what this code is about. I got a ton of emails from people. Hey, what's the code? What's the code? And I said, you know what, folks, wait for this program. And I hope it's clear to you now. I hope some of you understand what we're talking about. It is change. It is change. It is what W says, musical chairs. It is the ultimate inside signal. It is a boxing match that is rigged where the signal has been given for the other guy to fall.
Yeah, and let me add one thing here, V. Just building on something you said just a moment ago. One of the most interesting things, remember I called silver the transformational metal. What was this administration? What was their big code word?
Change.
Before they got elected in the first place.
Change.
Fundamentally transforming America. We reached that transformational moment. That's what they've coded. This is that transformational moment. The medium of transformation is about to be engaged. What did I say with the Bilderberg? They made a change. Whereas they were doing everything they could to protect this administration and this crowd, they're not going to take hands off. And what did your people say? The momentum is shifting from one family to the other because essentially all the families break down into two groups now, Rothschilds and Rockefellers. They're in one camp or the other. But it's not a battle to destruction. It's a battle to domination in the male-female, who's on top. That's the way they talk about it amongst themselves. And so now you're looking at this and you're going, transformation, transformational moment, transformational material. They're noting that this is a change-up, a change moment. They're at a change time in the way they're going to play the game. It's like letting loose of the rope in a tug-of-war game. Then you're going to fall on your behind. This is that transformational moment, and they're going to do it with the transformational material. And you're going to see the way the game is played. The rules maybe change slightly in the last part of this game. And so what do I see personally that fits, and I mentioned this earlier, similar to what happened with Putin? Putin played rope-a-dope right up until the Olympics. And then the gloves went off, and he came out swinging. These guys are going to get us. They're getting in position, and they're getting ready now because this next quarter is about locking in their positions with tangibles. Before what? The fourth quarter after the elections. Those elections, when they're done, there's nothing else to play for in the politics here. Everything's locked in. You get to the end of the term, and all the mischief. Where did the worst of the mischief occur with Bush too? When he was a lame duck, in that after when he was down to the last year. They're not going to wait till the last year because they have so much to do to complete this fundamental transformation. They're getting in position because the transformative game is now afoot in earnest. The race is on. They've been pacing themselves, but it's a sprint to the end. Anybody that runs in track or something like those, you sprint out of the box and then you set a pace that you can sustain, the fastest pace where you can still keep air going to your system and stay alive. And then that last little bit as you're closing on the finishing line, you crank it up. You kick it. They're going to crank it up and kick it. You get to that election, they're going to crank it up because they know the situation. The clock's ticking. The time is there. It's right now. But I mentioned this term that I want to introduce to the audience that I talked with UV about and that we talked with our the writer that's doing the article, Marinka Peshman. And that term that I think is so critical in all of this right now, look at all the bubbles. Classically, when a market would change, when something would happen in an economy, when something would happen in the politics or something like that, some bubble would burst. Hundreds of years ago with the Dutch and that whole area up there in Northern Europe, they had what they called the tulip bulb bubble. People were all into tulip bulbs, and they're trading whole lifetimes of monetary wealth for one tulip bulb because they could put them in the ground, grow them, and sell them and make money. And it was a bubble. It burst, and suddenly nobody wanted tulip bulbs anymore because you can keep growing them forever. And with the property thing, they keep subdividing land down to smaller and smaller parcels, and they build bigger and bigger houses, and we're going to run out of land, but they don't run out of land. They just add more roads and more taxes and everything else. And the real estate crisis, it's a bubble. And the paper that supports it's a bubble. The stock market situation, where you got to get into your position right away, or you're not going to be there for the next big run up, and you're going to get creamed, and you won't have any value because the market's going to rise, and you're not going to have made your money, and you won't have it for retirement, and you're going to go bust. And it's that Scythian thing, pushing the rock up the hill. We could go down the list and probably come up not with 5 major bubbles that in any other era in American history or world history would have set the world on its ear. We could probably go down the list and not name just 10 or even 20. We'd probably name 100 that any one of them would be enough in any other time to have set the world back, decade or two as the bubble burst and the crisis erupted. And this moment, it's bubbles on top of bubbles. And so most all of those bubbles are related to some type of a lie, a paper lie, a card game lie. You know, we look at the Fed and the printing of money, and we say, it's a Ponzi scheme. It's a bubble. We look at the stock printing. It's a bubble, the way that they're building up all the electronic trades and they're building up all these transactions on more stocks than to exist. You know, the money, it's built on, paper, on, stuff on deposit that doesn't exist. All of these bubbles are based on phony, lying paper. They're foamy bubbles. The bubble isn't just one bubble anymore. It's foamy bubbles. We are standing on a foamy stack of bubbles. And when not just one bubble bursts, all the bubbles burst. If anybody takes Windex out in the room you're standing in, run! They spray that Windex and that stack of bubbles you're standing on, you're going to fall right through the earth. A little light a day, break that tension on those bubbles, you're done. That's the moment we're in. A little bit of clarity, a little bit of truth, and we're done in any one of these markets. And what are they doing? Get a solid chair. The music is about to end. Don't walk slowly and measured to the lifeboat on the Titanic. Get your butt over to a lifeboat and get in it right now, because there isn't enough seats for everybody. Or make your prayers and make your arrangements and make your peace with God, because everything that you have built to this point is about to go to the bottom of the North Atlantic along with you. Get real. This is a real moment. This isn't just playtime conversation. A lot of people might take it seriously, and seriously is that they, put an extra can in the fridge or something. I don't know, whatever it is. But that's probably not going to be enough to save you. You've got to find your maker and ask him what he wants you personally to do. That is his plan for you to start getting out of the way of what's ahead, because it's going to be serious, it's going to be horrible, and there is time. It's not this week, this month. It will get painful. It will get worse progressively. You're going to see deterioration. You're going to see drama, but you got time if you have time to pray. God's as serious as you are. They're not playing around. They're sending real codes. Go ahead.
Exactly. Let me just interject something here. Since we did forego the top of the hour break, I just want to mention, you said, W, that we do have time. Folks, one of the big things you can do right now for your family, for yourself, go to AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. They're making this program possible for you tonight. Go to the new products area, go to the Trading Post product. It's a $159.95 item. It's called the Trading Post. This product was actually designed by the very people we have on the program tonight. Look, they know what they're talking about. As W mentioned, as V mentioned, food will become important to you. This product was developed for just that. That's called the Trading Post. It is a bag, a canvas bag. It has protein in it, food stuffs, 19 servings of chicken and turkey and sausage and egg powder and so on and so forth. 59 cents a serving approximately. This was developed for bartering, trading purposes. Look, we've got time, as W just said. As V indicated earlier, you're going to need food, water, in addition to silver. Making this show possible tonight, making the voices of V and W being able to be heard tonight is AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. Do something for your family. Do something for yourself. Order the Trading Post tonight, while you still have time. Go to AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, click on the new products, go to the Trading Post, get it while you can. We don't know how long this is going to last. This sale is going to last. And just consider the fact that if you current price is silver, 8 pieces of silver, 8 ounces of silver will buy this. If silver goes to $200 per ounce, this pack would trade for those same 8 ounces. So, folks, do it now, AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. For those joining us late, you're tuned into the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Special guest V, the guerrilla economist, RogueMoney.net. For a cup of coffee, the cost of a cup of coffee a month, you can have the financial inside information that V, the guerrilla economist, offers. We're clients, we're customers of V on the website. I would urge everybody, that's the best $2.99 or whatever it is a month that we've ever spent, that you can spend. We endorse it 100%. V, the guerrilla economist, at RogueMoney.net. And, of course, our very good friend W, a man, an insider, if you will. These are the voices you're hearing tonight. You're not going to get this anywhere else. As far as the conversation about endorsing guests, these two gentlemen are two that we, in fact, endorse and believe in 100%. With that, V, and thanks, gentlemen, for your indulgence for allowing me to say that. I had to pay the bills, but V, I'm going to turn it back to you, sir, and turn it to you for your comments on what W had said and for your extended comments as well.
One of the things that I want to make clear to a lot of individuals here, okay, we are in a market situation that's very, very unique. It's probably the most unique it's ever been in 800 years of human economic activity. And what I mean by that is this. We're living in a time, and as I've said before, where there is no fundamentals. The fundamentals have been removed, okay? And when there is no fundamentals, you lack structure. You lack discipline. And when there's no discipline, what you have is lies and corruption and fraud on every single level. Because of the nature of the beast that is the market today, this decrepit, diseased, pus-ridden, pustule, disgusting market, whatever you want to call this animal, this rotting corpse, you cannot trust that the information, that the signs will be readily available to you in the mass media. In other words, what I'm saying is, folks, it doesn't take rocket science for you to figure out that as the news gets progressively worse, the stock market gets higher. It doesn't require rocket science for you to figure out that, hey, there's something wrong when all the fundamentals are indicating one thing, but yet the volatility index is just too darn low. That is completely devoid and divorced from any sort of fundamentals or reality. So you cannot look for the Dow dropping, the VIX rising, the S&P doing this or that. The ultimate sign that could possibly be given to you was given to you tonight. The ultimate signal that you could have ever received, the secret of all secrets, for you to get ready, for you to exit, for you to begin the process, it's already been given to you. So what I want people to know, I get tons of emails, hey, what about this? What about that sign? What about this? What about the market here? Folks, you cannot look at the current metrics that we're using because the current metrics are all fraud. How can you rely upon fraudulent metrics that were created by fraudulent individuals in fraudulent markets dictating you the real value of a tangible? You just can't do that. This is the ultimate pump and dump. This is the ultimate smoke and mirrors game. And they've allowed it to happen this way because they're about to do a reordering. They're about to move things around, so to speak, to the next stage. And all that we're witnessing today, folks, is the birth pangs of a dying empire, a dying superpower that is just a caricature of its once former glory. They're allowing it. So you don't need to look at what's the VIX doing? What's the Russell 2000? Where's that at? How's that performing? Because it's all fake. It's not based on any sort of reality. It is the very credential, signs, and signets of con men. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's the time, folks, that, you shut off your TV, you cancel your subscription to the Wall Street Journal. Get your subscription to the roguemoney.net, of course, but you cancel your subscription to Financial Times, and you begin to start doing those things that are necessary in order for you to survive. And this is it, folks. This is literally like the Titanic, a ship designed to sink. And you have limited lifeboats. Real hard assets are finite. They're finite. It's not out there in vast sums for you to just gobble up. It's finite. If there's smoke in the theater, you don't run up and scream and try to make a mad dash to the exit doors over here, because then nobody gets out. What you do is you get up quietly and you begin to move out. And that's the sign you folks need to get tonight. Is there smoke? And where there's smoke, there's fire. In this case, it's a raging inferno. And it has been lit, and it is raging through Africa, through the Middle East, through Europe. Show me a corner of the world where this fire is not emulating the very structures and rudiments of society. Show me where. The Bible talks about the perplexity of nations, the stress. Everywhere you look, nations are perplexed. Everywhere you look, nations are stressed. We are converging on a very, very serious point in human history. We are converging into what the Bible calls the labor pains, the birth pangs. Because there's something that is happening. A transformation is occurring. And if you can hear me in the spirit, you're feeling that too. You've been feeling that unease. And tonight, folks, what W and I are talking about, we're giving you a clarion call. We're giving you the masses a front row seat to real inside information. This is not entertainment. And look, there's quite a few individuals, people, groups that will listen to a program tonight and think it's great entertainment. Wow, that's some good ideas. W, the Intelligence Society, or V, the Guerrilla great radio. Folks, we're not Jack Bauer over here and Louis Salinger. If you don't know who said Louis Salinger is, the character from The International. We're not replacements for your entertainment. This is not business as usual. This is serious stuff. It's going to require serious prayer on your part, serious seeking of the Lord on your part. It's time the TV goes off and you get on your knees. You get on your knees and you begin to seek the Lord while he yet may be found. Because some of you have the means to move, and some of you don't. And those that don't, you need an intervention that is divine, that is from God himself, to give you the direction and the grace to not only move, but to withstand and survive what is to come. That's what's the most important thing. Because the war that we're talking about, folks, it's not in the physical sense. This is an invisible war. It's been raging for millennia. Countless millennia. And it's culminating up until this time. And that's what this is all about. This is beyond borders. This is beyond politicians. This is not about Obama, the puppet. This is not about Putin. This is not about any of that. These are just characters on a play, on a theater for the profane. Characters for you and I to root for and think that we're a part of. We like to feel like we belong. But this is theater. This is theater. Let's not forget that for 1 second. This is theater. And what is at play here is more than just nations. It's more than borders. It's more than countries. It's more than currencies. It's not a currency war we're facing. It's a war in the spiritual sense, to the fullest ownership of the human soul. That's what this is all about. So tonight, you take this warning. You chew on it. You think it through real good. Pray about it. And you see where the Lord takes you.
You know, let me just add one thing, too. For all those people that, they think, God's behind America and he's going to help us and we're going to get through this together, etc. And he's going to help us, with our investments and to protect ourselves, etc.
Right.
God's going to bless your money with all its satanic symbols on it, with all Masonic imprints. He's going to bless my money and make it more. He's going to give me more of that green stuff. He's going to bless that. He's going to multiply that. God, which God are you talking about here? We're in, it's like that series from Sopranos. And the restaurateur gets in a little bit of trouble, and so the mob comes in. They're going to loan him a little bit of money and help him out with his business and help him out of his business. And eventually he owes so much that the only alternative that they give him is to burn the place down, bust him out. Well, why is he in that shape in the first place? Because they were just going to help him build his business? Yeah. They went in there and they're bleeding it dry every way you can possibly do it. That's the politicians you've elected. That's the people you put in charge of your pension. That's the people that you gave the responsibility to take care of you in your retirement because they promised me. And they wrote these tax laws that require me to invest in this way to get a matching deduction and to avoid getting billed this in taxes, etc. They wrote the rules for the game to corner you into their card game. They've got you right where they wanted you. And they're going to bust you out. And at the end, you're not even going to get the insurance money. They're getting that too. Trying to play nice with thugs and hooligans, blackmailers, murderers. Oh, God, please bless my retirement funds and make the stock market go up because I need that tax deduction and I need to take care of my kids a little bit too. That money is going to be gone. They're going to clip it all away. The devil's going to be laughing at you. What are they going to be doing? They're going to be sitting on their silver and their gold. Doesn't mean that it's a permanent position for them. They're going to move back into their new world currency at some point in time. What you got to do is get out of the way, take your winnings, leave the table before what's about to happen happens so that you're somewhat viable to help those around you who wouldn't listen. And this is a really important point. I had this conversation the other day with somebody else that is a member of this audience. Are you going to go talk to your kids about this? Because I really think that we should do something here. You can talk to your kids about it, they're going to laugh or have you put in a freaking mental institution. You don't need to talk to your kids, you need to talk to God. And if God tells you to do something, what, you got to go consult with your kids to get a confirmation? They're not even in the same world as you are, half of them. You tell them you're going to kind of put something away for the future to protect against, you know, if things go sideways, they think you're stealing their money because they've already got it spent. They're buying a new Ferrari, and they're going to get this guest house built and the property to take care of grandma in her old age, unless she's really starts to get dementia, then we'll put her in a home. If God's telling you to do something, shut up. Don't say a word. Hide it in your heart. Take action according to what he tells you. It's very personal. For some people, they're going to put some food away. Some people might have access to warehouses of toilet paper and paper towels. Well, maybe that's something that you can trade with. And some people, don't worry about getting silver. If you got the ability to have freeze-dried food or to get it, you have freeze-dried food, you'll have all the silver you want. This crisis gets going the way we're saying. People are going to be trading their silver or gold for. Sustenance. And even then, you don't want to be highly visible. It's like one of those Twilight scene movies. You don't need everybody. Well, I think the end of the world is coming, or we could have a financial calamity in America, so I'm going to do something. Don't tell anybody. Get your house in order. Put some things aside. It doesn't have to be the end of America or even a huge crisis. How many of you people even are paying attention? I watch for certain geophysical things that happen based on certain physics. And I've been watching this whole situation with what's coming here this year with these moon phases. You know, in the West Coast here, we have two near passes of the moon, one in July and one in September, where the tidal pull on the Earth, you know, the tides pull the water up and the water goes down. Well, underneath the water and underneath the crust, which is only the thickness of an onion skin practically against the whole Earth, is magma, super dense, super heavy. It gets pulled too. And that magma pulls against the crust of the Earth. Well, when we get those two near passes on July 12th in the morning and the evening, just before dawn, just before sunset, and on September 9th, the one I'm really concerned about, I won't say worried, but I'm paying very close attention to, but they're both important. You could very well have a significant earthquake on the West Coast, most likely in Southern California, but it could be anywhere in the West Coast, including up to Seattle and Cascadia, anywhere where there's a fault, because it's a near pass with the moon and it has excessive tidal forces. And in these two particular ones, there's other celestial alignments, other planetary alignments that, if you understand the rest of the physics, accentuate that pull. But let's even go a step beyond that for a second. If we're saying there's a Judy Wood technology out there, go back and listen to the show that Doug did with her. Go online and do a search, Judy Wood. And there's other technologies that may have been involved in bringing down the World Trade Center, almost certainly were. Well, those technologies, the former director of the CIA, Cohen, went to the UN and said, we have to have international agreements against those technologies being used as a weapon, can do this and this and this, and cause earthquakes and volcanoes to blow up. That was 35 years ago. 30 and 35 years ago, they were talking about we got to have international agreements between countries not to use these technologies that we all have. Well, if they got technology that can cause earthquakes, when's the best time to cause an earthquake or to spur an earthquake? When it's already just about going to happen anyway through natural forces. If these guys got a plan and they want to, you know, disrupt things a little bit, they want to distract from a political crisis, a voter crisis, they don't want an election to happen somewhere down the road, whatever, well, they might use a natural earthquake and just make it a little more precise, or guarantee it happens on time when it's already, you know, they were teetering over the edge. I gave them a nudge with a little extra technology. Those windows are no kidding around windows. If you had a serious major crisis of a quake on the West Coast in either of those dates, What's going to happen to the stock market, to the economy, to the dollar, to all sorts? What's it going to do? It could trigger all sorts of things. And if you got insiders that are playing with those technologies, maybe just like the World Trade Center stuff changed the world. Maybe a quake in that kind of location puts us on edge enough to change the world in some other fundamental. It was an act of nature. You're dealing with mobsters, Satanists, demons, the devil himself who's in control of them all. They're going to pull out every stop. Do not underestimate the level of evil involved here and the precision with which they are taking action to see through their plans to reach their goal, which is what? A new world order, man. They've said it 100 million times right there to your face. And it's not 100 years from now. It's right now. The game is afoot. Get serious. Do your best to get out of the way. Find out what you personally can and should be doing. Get it from the Almighty and make it happen. What he tells you to do is not the same thing he's going to tell your relative to do or me to do or V to do. Get personal instruction, and then don't tell everybody in the world what you're doing, and don't ask permission from everybody what to do. Do what God shows you to do, because we're in that kind of a time frame where you don't want everybody to know your business. Shut up, do it quietly, but get it done, and get it done now.
That was a very dramatic pause, by the way, purposeful. Think about that. Think long and hard about that. V, I'm gonna ask you a question here. I've been getting multiple questions about, and I don't even know if this is relevant. About
please no more 401k questions.
No. I can't even joke about that anymore. Foreign Account Tax Compliant Act.
Yeah.
FATCA. I guess I heard it's going to be extended. The law that was passed in 2010. I heard the reporting requirements can be extended through the end of the year. Is that true? You know?
Yes. It was initially supposed to be July. Actually, it was supposed to go into July 18th of this year. It was supposed to go effect. But they pushed it towards the end of the year.
Okay. Anything to be concerned right now for our audience, our listening audience, with respect to the Foreign Account Tax Compliant Act?
Well, here's the thing. There's a lot of my clients that are abroad that have investments abroad. Okay. Temporarily, there will be a small window where you will have some stress if you're in the wrong country with the wrong financial institution, where they'll force you to sign a W-9 and start coughing up all the reporting on what you have in what account. There are ways around that. Okay. Now, this pressure from FATCA is temporal, and what I mean by temporal is this: this is being done by a broken, insolvent government who is trying to fleece its populace for every last drop of wealth right out of their coffers. Okay, they're trying to squeeze you for every penny. Now, as the government goes broke and goes insolvent, and as certain requirements are right now being kicked around the house, where certain laws are wanting to have the IRS cut by about 15%, FATCA's not going to have much teeth to it. You see? It looks like a fearsome monster, but as this whole cascading collapse progresses, it's going to be a paper tiger. There's going to be nothing to it. It's going to be like the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Protocol. The Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's going to be dead on arrival. So long term, I wouldn't worry about it. Short term, there's going to be some stress. So if you are an individual, you have investments abroad, you want to figure out how to hide it, or you're an American here, you're worried about some of your things you have abroad, contact me. I'll show you how to do it.
Thank you for that. One more question, and this is something I reported 5 years ago. I sent you the email on it. I've got to ask you about this. 5 years ago, actually 5 years ago tomorrow, I reported on the Japanese national that we're smuggling $134.5 billion in U.S. government bearer bonds, which happened to be exactly the exact amount of the remaining TARP money at the time, the U.S. Troubled Asset Relief Program, or TARP money, as it was announced by the Department of Treasury back in 2009. But bottom line on that, is that relevant today? Was that the scheme where there were two Japanese nationals caught smuggling or attempting to smuggle $134.5 billion worth of U.S. government bearer bonds? I guess they got caught at the Swiss border, I believe it was. Was that a criminal conspiracy that has relevance today, or was that just part of a continuing course of criminal conduct that we should just kind of keep in the back of our minds? Is that something that we should discuss, or is that something that's over?
Yeah, it's part of the much larger. It's part of the continuing criminal conduct that's occurring globally. This is all part of the fraud. That all ties in with the Japanese bond market. We've seen the pressures in the Japanese bond market intensifying. It also ties into the yen carry trades. I mean, there's a lot going on with that particular situation. But we have to put that in the category of another operation in a long-standing list of operations of criminal conduct done by the elite banking structures.
All right, I didn't mean to take either one of you off.
Let me hold on. Let me add something in here. You and I both separately have had some interesting conversations in the last 2 weeks with Russian colleagues.
Yes.
And mine that occurred just over the last weekend. And, of course, in true Russian style, he was bragging on their military prowess and capabilities, and this is somebody that is in a position to know, and basically laughing at me. And because of the fact that we've essentially done everything we could do in the worst possible way. We've, all the way back to Clinton, we're going to take the first strike because their missiles aren't accurate enough to take us out. So we're going to take the first strike and absorb the blow. We're not going to try to respond. If we see missiles flying, we're just going to hold our ground, let them use up what they have, and then we'll go back and strike them, just so we don't make a mistake in case it's a misunderstanding. Maybe the computers aren't working right or something when we see all these missiles coming over on the computer screens. So we're not going to take a chance. We're just going to go ahead and stand down. We'll take the strike. We lose a few places, a few 100,000 personnel, a few million citizens. Well, whatever. Then the other thing is and you've been standing still. You're building tanks and battleships and big, huge, monstrous things. We stopped doing that. You might be looking at it, but the stuff right now, we're spending our money in ways that actually count, and we're getting out of the way. Try taking out one of our underground facilities that they've never stopped building during all of this period going back to Reagan. While they were broke, they were building underground cities and storing them. And what was he doing? He was bragging on the fact that they had just completed moving a serious quantity of heavy machinery that they'd purchased in the West into those secure locations. That was just mind-boggling. And I'm going, they're not backing down. They're expecting that this is going to blow up into a major, monstrous confrontation, and they're getting ready for it because they don't see a happy ending here. And they're laughing. And the other thing is that as far as he was concerned, the reason we're going to lose with what's coming right now, and this is the guy that came to the West and has now realized, I got to bug out of here. I came here to the bad guys, and I now realize they're just as bad here, and they're just as dumb, maybe dumber, And if I stay here, I'm in somebody's sights. I'm in my own comrade, brother's, former friend's sights. I got to get the heck out of Dodge. He's getting ready to bug out of here, and he loved it here on principle. And he got here, and he's now realizing, oh, my gosh, this is a guy that is a Christian. He came here because they allowed some of the Christians to leave at the end of Gorbachev. And he's no kidding around guy, and he goes back to all the time. He's still got relatives that are in very high-ranking positions, and he was one of the guys that I worked against, countered against. We're both talking the same thing, and he's like, yeah, I got to get out of here. I got to go. I can't stay here. You got to pay attention to this. He's got what we call scat. The guy that's got scat, you have a hard time catching him. Every cop out there knows what I'm talking about. That's that guy that's just nimble enough he can get over the fence, and you're just like, how in the world did he do that? He's got scat. He's got senses, and his senses are telling him, dodge, dive, move, get the heck out of the way, and don't be slow about it. Any of your listeners got scat? Maybe they need to get an exercise routine. I've got some old Jane Fonda videos that they can go do the exercise. Start getting in shape. Something's coming. Scat in your system.
Gentlemen, we've got about 8 minutes left of the program. I can't believe how quickly this has gone. V, I'm going to turn it over to you. A lot said tonight.
What did your Russian say, V? What did your Russian say, V? V, are you there? What did your Russian say?
Do we still have you, buddy? Let me look at the...
I'm here. I apologize. I'm here. I apologize. I accidentally hit the mute button.
I thought the commies got you.
Not yet.
We do that all the time.
But no, it's pretty funny. I talk to my guys, and it's like talking to W, but the Russian version. It's scary, and it's the difference is this: people over there in Russia, they love their culture. So their guys, they've built these massive underground tunnels, facilities, and even cities. And it's going to be for their people. Whereas over here, nothing's done. Nothing's done about it whatsoever. So they are willing, and just like W said, they're going to play this to the end because they do not expect a happy ending. They know that there's going to be some sort of an exchange, nuclear in origin. And it's going to be horrific. And there will be weapons used such as which the world has never seen before. The difference is their population, the vast majority of their population, their silver, folks, is that their government has made preparations for their people to survive. Our government has made preparations to kill you. That's the difference. Their government's building tunnels. Our government's built FEMA camps. Their government's stockpiling provisions. Our government stockpiles bullets. I mean, how much more of a wake-up call? So I can understand when W's buddy wants to bug out of here. I don't blame him. You got to bug out of here. If you have the means and the resources, you got to get out of here. You have to. I mean, you're insane to stay, unless you're called to stay and you want to. You have a purpose and a mission here. But you got a family. I mean, you got the means. What are you doing here? So I mean, apart from that, I mean, all the other things they're doing, the tunnel they got underneath the Bering Strait, all these things, man. I mean, it's unbelievable, mind-blowing stuff, folks. Mind-blowing stuff. And it's important, and I hope that at the end of this program, you folks understand this is not entertainment here. This is not a game. This is reality, and reality. This is for keeps. These guys are playing for keeps. If you guys any questions on anything, you can reach out to me, GorillaEconomist.com. I mean, at gmail.com website. Also want to let everybody know, anybody with a iOS device, we've got the Rogue Money app out. So there's lots of ways to stay in touch with the information. Contact me. Any viable email I get, I forward to W. Me and him were always talking all the time. Time is serious, folks. We're ready to move on this. If there's anybody out there that really needs help, we're willing to help you.
Well, let me just add one thing, too, V. Let me just add one thing, V. This isn't about making money and trying to, pump somebody for some money. Find whatever way that you're supposed to do it. As a Chance Merrill and I talked over at American Food Wholesale, food is money. That's why he's putting together those special trading packs that are much more durable than just any average freeze-dried pack. And they're marked as such. Why? Because they can become just like money, traded as money. And it has real value in a crisis. And it could be any number of crises. There could be, some people talk about Yellowstone blowing. I don't think it's going to blow. But you could have a problem on the New Madrid fault, and it'd be pretty horrific. You could have any kind of a crisis out there with that island out there in the Atlantic slipping and sliding and inundating the East Coast with some water. You could have natural crises. We have lots of we could have a sunspot strike, and suddenly all our satellites are down, and we're vulnerable, including to attack without being able to see it coming because we can't get new satellites up fast enough, and they're not hardened enough to take a for real EMP from the sun. It doesn't have to be from Iran or North Korea. You have a solar EMP and take down half or all or some significant portion of the grid, some sections. And things don't work right for a few weeks or months or a year or two. Trucks don't run right because they got to be redone on the electronics. The food doesn't go to the warehouses the right way. So with that in mind, food would be money. You don't need silver. You need food. In a condition that is recognizable and durable and hardy enough to survive some transactions, even amongst relatives and friends. You're not going to go out in this corner of the street and open a food stand. You'll get knocked over the head and they'll take it. But you might need to trade with a neighbor or two a little covertly to keep viable and not just for your own good, but for their good too. Maybe they got things that you need, some fuel or something like that, and they need some food. Well, if you got some food, you can trade it. But at the end of the day, whatever you got, skills, intelligence, get out of the way, find what's the right thing for you in your location, your situation, or start working an option to get out of the way. If you're in a major city, that might not be the best place to be. If you got a kid that's out in a little more rural location, or his grandpa in a more rural location, start thinking in terms of, I got a motorhome or a trailer and some stuff in there so I could go survive and I could help them survive and be a little bit not in the direct path if things come unraveled a bit for a period of time. Just have an option. That was wise 100 years ago. That was wise 500 years ago. I'm just telling you to go back to your roots of being, people had a pantry and they could get by for 3 months. How many of you could get by for 3 months with what you got in your house right now? That's all I'm saying. And if you can't do it with food, or it's not easy, or it wouldn't travel well, some silver, that makes sense to these guys. I don't think we're at that level yet where it's the end of the world scenario, but the problem is these things go up in price, and then you can't get it later. And that's what these guys are coding to each other. Get your position. We're about to start playing the game a little different. So get a position so you got some for the future. And some of what V knows, there's certain ways to do it that give you greater leverage and make more sense for different people and different groups. He can save you a lot of cash in what you're trying to accomplish and get you out of cash into something real right now a lot more easily and a lot more cost effectively than he's going to be able to do in 3, 6, 9 months. So do it. Get out of the way. That's all we're saying.
Do it now. Do it now. And W and V, I got to say, we're at the end of the program. I just want to say it's been one heck of a program, epic program indeed. God bless you both. V,
Absolutely.
you got the final word. You got 15 seconds for the final word, sir.
Definitely. Just want to thank all of you for giving us the opportunity to come on here and share with all of you. And, reach out to us, and now's the time. Please take what we're saying, pray about it, take what we're saying, and really think it through. Time is short.
All right. God bless you both. Good night.
God bless you guys.
So tomorrow we'll be back with Steve Quayle and Pastor Langford. Have a great night. God bless. See you tomorrow, 8 p.m.